to the official podcast of FCS Fans Nation with your hosts Kyler Neal, Matthew Frazee, and Jmu Williams.
FCS Fans Nation. We are coming to you live tonight with a little bit of a slower and somber opening, with a little bit of a shout out and maybe a little bit of a life lesson before we kick off our podcast here. Mr. Williams, would you like to introduce us as we enter this podcast for a little bit of reflection tonight?
Yeah, welcome to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Along all your podcast viewing and listening areas of the intranet and the interwebs. I'm Jmu Williams, guesting with our host Matthew Frazee and Kyler Neal. Before we get going into your questions, which were great today, and talk about what happened yesterday and what's coming up next week, we do want to take some time to send our condolences to our fellow admin and, more importantly, our friend Lawrence Smith, who lost his grandfather this past week at the age of 95. Mr. Morrison obviously lived a great life at 95 years old, but we'd be remiss if we didn't take this time to send our condolences to Lawrence and the whole Smith and Morrison family. Veteran of 2 wars, so great service to his nation, planting churches, Rotary Club member. Seemed to me just like a great guy, still in his 90s, loving to go in JMU football games with his daughter and his grandson. So before we get into our 7 questions, we just wanted to take a quick second to pause, send our condolences, honor the life of Mr. Morrison, Lawrence's grandfather, and send our best. Matt, I'll kick it back to you on that note. Lawrence, we're here for you, buddy.
Absolutely. And that's just FCS Fans Nation as a whole. Of course, we got Lawrence's back no matter what. He's one of our best friends and a great admin. I'm rocking the James Madison Duke hat that he gave me down in Frisco tonight. And just kind of a good reminder that some things are bigger than sports. Sports are an amazing connector. Hopefully this podcast, your football game, gives you a little bit of a distraction from some of the tough things in real life. But everybody's going through tough times. And of course, Lawrence and his family, we're thinking about him right now. But you'd be amazed at FCS Fans Nation how many people have shared posts about a death in the family, or this meant something to me, or I wore this hat with my mom, with my dad, my son. So sometimes there's things bigger than sports, and this is one of those moments just to take it in and reflect that a little bit. So Duke Dog Lawrence, we've always got his back. Thoughts and prayers were with his family. If they need anything, we got them. So hopefully, guys, if you're listening to this on your drive to work or drive home, maybe this podcast, if you got something going on, could be a little bit of a distraction and bring a light to your day as we enter talking about sports. So FCS Fans Nation, let's get right into the Big 7, and hopefully we'll bring a bright one to your day today.
The top 7 FCS topics of the week. This is the Big 7.
All right, gentlemen, let's kick right into an FCS Fans Nation podcast. Bring our listeners another phenomenal show. Like Jamie had mentioned, Kyler, myself, Matthew, Jamie, we're all here together last week. Jamie, good to have you back after the last week having a little bit of break, and that's okay. Real life gets in the way sometimes. But we're kicking right into our top 7 topics, guys, and these are going to be great because the questions that our fans asked this week are super heavy into the top 5 because ooh, baby, we had some close calls. And sometimes we ended up on the right end of those close calls, didn't we? So we're going to kick it off right away, which was probably the most exciting matchup and most expected big game of the week, Montana, Eastern Washington. And we got quite a few questions here for you, Kyler, obviously, since everybody knows you're an Eastern Washington fan. But I'm going to start with the top 2 here. Jeremiah Rash and Dustin Helton want to know how happy you are about the big win. They're also curious if you flipped any cars in excitement. And on to the more in-depth question from Will Siller connecting to your happiness is, Will asks, we've seen high-flying offenses make deep runs before but fall flat at the hands of a really good defense in the playoffs. Is Eastern Washington the exception this year? Because he's having a hard time thinking of more of a favorite to win a national title because he really likes what he's seeing out of Eastern. Are those too high of expectations? What should we expect? give us some reflection, man. How do you feel, Kyler, after that big win for your Eagles?
I don't know. It's just a win every single day. Nothing new.
Oh,
Welcome
yeah.
to Cheney. Welcome to Cheney. Welcome to Cheney. No, man. For those of you who did not watch, sucks to be you. That was such a good game on both sides. It went down to the wire. I mean, you saw what Eastern's known for. You saw what Montana's known for so far this year. It was definitely a high flying powered offense versus an unstoppable defense, or vice versa. You know, an unstoppable offense versus a defense who just beats everyone. It started off that same way. Eastern scored real quick. It was pretty awesome. Then Montana pretty much held us own, made Eric Barrier run for his life. The defensive schemes, I just want to give props to Montana where props are due. I've never seen defensive scheming like this. At the end of the day, they just could not keep up. They started gassing at the end. There's a few mistakes on both teams. But this was one of those things. Is Montana's offense better than Eastern's defense? Because we heard a lot about Eastern's defense the last 3 weeks. I don't know. I think the defense looked pretty good, but I'm pretty happy. No cars were flipped, but I'm pretty happy. Can't go wrong beating the Grizz at home. That's the game we all care about. So yeah, definitely pretty happy, but it was just a heck of a game overall. And I wanted to give Montana a little bit of props because they look like they're the real deal as well.
Yeah, it's not like Montana, it's going to feel, we don't even have any questions about them. I think their fans are a little bit silent right now, but people usually get more excited about the winners. But they shouldn't just be disregarded after such a gallant effort. I mean, if Eastern is as good as people are starting to believe they are, this is a top 5 matchup, you know? So it's not like Montana is just throw them out the window, cut them dry. Now they can't win a championship. So
yeah,
they look stuff.
They look good, but now to answer like Will's actual question, is Eastern Washington a title contender? Is that kind of what he was asking basically, or the title favorite, if you will?
Yeah, and if they're not title contenders, are they an exception to most teams who are all offense, no defense? And is that true about Eastern? Is Eastern's defense being downplayed? Like, what is Eastern Washington? Is it Eric Barrier and all offense, or I mean, what are we dealing with here? Are we dealing with a 2018 balanced squad? Because they're going to be top 5 this week.
Well, the nice thing is there's a couple stats that came down. Eastern Washington's total defense is the lowest it's been since 2010. So that may not seem like a lot to you guys, right? But if Eastern Washington is holding teams to 360 yards, that's all we need. We are one of those exceptions to the rules, like Will's saying. We do not need an elite defense, but we need to have a good defense. And most people, they saw Eastern Washington this year, and they only saw one game, really, and it was the 2 quarters of Western Illinois where they were gassing. People said, Kyler, now you're just blaming it on heat and humidity. Eastern Washington's tired. Nope, they're just horrible. This is what Montana did, and there was no heat and humidity. So Eastern Washington's defense is better than they have showed this year, and this was a game that kind of toted it. They're not an elite defense, but they're good enough to win you games. And then when you have the offense, that's where I think, yes, we are a title contender. Are we the favorite? I don't think we want to go there, but we're looking very similar to a 2018 type of style for Eastern Washington right now.
Hey, and maybe we shouldn't knock Eastern Washington's defense. Maybe we should compliment Western Illinois' offense, Western Illinois' offense, they're not winning a lot of games, but boy, are they scoring points. So give them some credit.
They're in a lot of games. They just took, Southern Illinois to the wire. They had a big comeback versus Youngstown State. They may be the best one-win team in the country, but they're also Eastern Washington's defense looked bad in that fourth quarter when they were gassed. They gave up 28 points. Montana, same thing this week. Sometimes you are going to get gassed in these games, and it will make your defense not look as good as it is. If people only saw the stats for this game, they're like, Montana doesn't have a good defense. It's just not true. Montana's defense was elite for a lot of the game. So, yeah, Eastern Washington's defense is actually solid. We resemble 2018. I think it does make us a title contender because of our offense and having a good enough defense who's going to get you enough stops. That's all Eastern Washington needs, enough stops. But will they be able to be the favorite and compete with the JMU? Not going to say yes or no. I think we need a lot of work, though.
So that's a good question to kind of bring Jamie into the fold on this one, because Jamie has cautioned Montana fans in terms of that giant win they had with top 20 FBS over Washington. You've cautioned them a little bit, Jamie, but now you have to see an Eastern Washington team. Are you going to caution Eagle fans as well, who are certain to be top 5 and almost replace Montana? or are you going to view them a little bit in a better light? What's your take overall after this matchup?
I'm definitely going to view Eastern in a little bit better light because I do focus more on the FCS matchups. And two things just about yesterday's game. I believe it might have been a couple weeks ago. Kyler said, look, if Eastern just gives up one touchdown a quarter, I'm comfortable with that because we can outscore the other team from there. That's exactly what happened last night. Montana played pretty well on defense. They were coming from all over the place. But here's where I'm going to say Eastern Washington made the biggest gain on their defense, and it's right there at the bottom of that screen. I think we can all agree that Acom is one of the better receivers in the FCS, and was that 4 catches for 58 yards. That means Eastern had a nice game plan because they took away the top option. Cam Humphrey is an okay quarterback. I hope he's okay. Doesn't look like it. Xavier Harris, I mean, that's a fast young man. He was tough to stop, but they stopped Acom. Number 8 on defense for Eastern was all over the place. And then what else can you say about Barrier? 422 yards. But Eric gets all the headlines. But if you stop right there, Dennis Merritt has been one of the hidden gems of the FCS so far. I mean, because you're going to hear about Barrier, you're going to hear about Limu Jones with 231 yards, but Dennis Merritt scores every week.
And
he moves the chains. Go ahead.
I don't even know if you guys are aware because you were East Coast guys. Limu Jones got injured in the 4th pretty bad when he was really one of our only weapons, and we still were able to find other guys. That's kind of one of the factors, but he is a mismatch for the FCS on every level, so that instantly makes us at least open in most games. We're going to be able to find the 6'4", 225 guy who can run a 4.4, 5.40.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we talk about title favorites. I think we've been talking about 5 title favorites all year. Replace Montana with Eastern Washington because they just won that. They're the 5th now. But hey, don't sleep on UC Davis, Southern Illinois, or watch out, Northern Iowa. Just keep your eye. So yeah, that those top 2 tiers are kind of blending and growing week by week. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know if I'm willing to throw Montana out as well. I think maybe you could go from 5 to 6 teams. So maybe expand it a little bit. And even what you said, Jamie, there are some squads, and we're going to cover a few more of them coming up here. One final quick question for you, Kyler, before we move out. Do you think that outcome is any different if home fields are switched around? Do you think that affects anything?
Yeah, playing in Montana is a very difficult place to play. I mean, I would say they have some of the best home field advantage, if not probably the best in all of the FCS. Because for one, you have to deal with outside elements. You have to deal with a crowd who is on top of you. There's no sidelines like in that stadium. It's like the Fargo Dome. Pretty intimidating place to play. I think these are probably 3-point teams. So give a 3-point favorite to whoever's at home. I think that's probably a fair bet. But I don't. Yeah, I think it could have been the exact same thing. But I also think this could have been a 6-point Montana win if it was at Montana. It's definitely interchangeable, even if we play on a neutral field right now. The scores can be interchangeable with these two squads and how their balances and offensive attacks, defensive attacks kind of go against each other. Makes it a dangerous game wherever it's played.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to throw that one out there because as we're going to see throughout this podcast, home field advantage, the playoffs, the margin is razor thin. We'll have to see how it plays out. So good win for the Eagles. Really top stuff. So, all right, Mr. Williams, I want to start you off here right away, my man, with Peter Hagen's question. He's a great South Dakota State Jackrabbit fan. He says, with the exception of Colorado State, SDSU's schedule so far hasn't been very difficult. I understand the premise behind a tune-up game, but will this hurt or help them for the games coming up? So kind of a weaker start to the schedule. Do you see any of those effects as they go into a big matchup with SIU and, of course, NDSU coming up in the beginning of November? What do you think about them Jackrabbits so far, Jamie? They need a tune-up?
I don't think it either helped or hurt them. They were going to do what they've been doing pretty much regardless of the schedule. I almost feel like this team's schedule-proof. They have the lines on both sides of the football. They've got a capable quarterback. Fortunately, they lost one of their two-headed monsters running back, Isaiah. But Pierre Strong's pretty good. And Yankee Twins, pretty good. They lost Don Gardner last week. So the only issues South Dakota State's had through their first few games is kind of the same thing JMU did, is health. You gotta stay healthy. But they've also shown their depth because it really hasn't fazed them losing a guy each week that they've expected to contribute in big ways. But hey, business is about to pick up because every other game for them the rest of the way is going to be tough, and then you can't overlook some of those other teams. I mean, Southern Illinois is tough. Western Illinois, we've already seen they can at least score and challenge you. Northern Iowa, they're coming. Youngstown State has a running back who can break one at any time. We don't have to talk about the marker. We know what that is all about. South Dakota, they've been playing well. And then North Dakota, thankfully for Jackrabbits, they get them at home. So, yeah, they just have to continue doing what they're doing. And they'll be right there when the bracket's released here the week before Thanksgiving.
You know, it kind of with the SDSU, it feels like it's almost a hookup, right? I don't think that that's a bad thing at all, Peter, because you guys were the furthest into the playoffs. So besides Sam Houston, you guys played more games, went further, practiced longer in the spring. And so, I mean, you went all out all the way with Colorado State. But to have a Dixie and some others to where, man, we can rotate in some backups and maybe rest some legs a little bit even further. Now, does that have an overall big effect? No. But also college football, tune-ups don't really exist. So it's not like NFL where you have preseason games. You know, some FCS teams go right into an FBS game right off the bat. So tune-ups don't really exist so much unless you are scheduling specifically for like a Drake or a Butler on week 1. But man, SDSU, what a hookup on that schedule for just how it worked this year. Literally, you see verses on the screen if you're watching on YouTube of they're at home against Southern Illinois, at home against Northern Iowa, North Dakota State, and UND, all in alternating weeks. So, I mean, couldn't have been better for them to completely avoid a tough road game for this fall. But, hey, it is what it is. Kyler, what do you think about SDSU? You think this gauntlet they're about to enter is going to be tough on them, or what do you think for these Jackrabbits?
I mean, just looking at the gauntlet there, it's going to be tough on any team. I think we can just say that. SDSU may be an exclusion to the rule because of when you're watching them play, even through these easier games and they're out of conference, they're passing every single eye test you can even imagine. Kind of alluded to what Jamie was saying. They're big, they're physical, they can run, they have a very capable quarterback. I might have been too down on him. So, Chris, I'm sorry about that. But I want to see how you're playing against some of these other teams still. So I'm still having a little bit of reservation. But if you are ever watching this podcast, sir, you're playing extremely well. And if you do that through these teams, you're definitely going to prove me wrong. But I don't think the easier schedule helped them. I don't think it hurt them. Maybe it will help them, kind of like what Matt was saying, for the future down the road. Hey, you got some more depth in. Maybe that doesn't even help you for this season. But any type of playing time will help a player who's going to come in the wings. That's what you see NDSU and JMU. That's what they've been doing with their easier opponents the last few years. They've had fairly easier, out of conference schedules. They're able to get quite a bit of depth and rotation in, and then they're just as good the next year. So I think maybe it does help them for a few seasons, but not this season. But the gauntlet, man, that's a tough road. Good luck. I think they can do it. If anyone can, they can.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely brutal. I mean, Southern and NDSU don't play each other because of the 2-year rotation from the Missouri Valley scheduling. So SDSU, Youngstown, they're going to kill them. And besides that, Western Illinois with that really good offense, who knows? And South Dakota, that's a rival. So you got to go to a rival. I think it was 2015-14. I'm on the year, but Jackrabbit fans would know, where SDSU was set up for a seed. And the last week they went to South Dakota, and they were way better than South Dakota. And they lost. So I think that was 2016 or 2015. But anyway, South Dakota, we'll have to see how you guys handle this really difficult upcoming schedule. So great question, Peter. Guys, Charlie Seaman's got a great question for us here. He says, do you think Sam Houston's 15 points in the fourth quarter to win had more to do with talent or culture? This is a phenomenal question. He says he believes last season's close playoff games helped his team pull out the win when so much was going against them. Man, I love this. Kyler, go ahead and start. I've got some thoughts on this, but go ahead, my man.
I don't know if I could say it's culture besides Sam Houston. Yeah, they know they can win these games. And SFA, they're an up and coming program. It seems like this year they're actually doing extremely well compared to maybe what they were a few years ago. The new coach has them kind of shooting for the stars, shooting for conference championships, not just being an okay team in the Southland. So maybe the culture thing is true, but I also think, Sam Houston is probably just a little bit better of a team, better coached right now. SFA is still young in the sense that they're this new up and coming program. Maybe they will get some culture. Maybe they're going to be a little bit better in the next few years, maybe more battle tested, and proven, hey, we can win these types of games, because they haven't really been able to win these types of games in a very long time. But so I think maybe there's a little bit of both. Sam Houston, I think, has the better talent. I think they're more proven. I think they're a better coach right now, and they have that winner's mentality. They're the champs. I think they're going to have a little bit more heart than a lot of other teams who have maybe we've seen give up. The champs do not give up, and you saw that throughout the playoffs all last year. Every single fourth quarter, last few minutes of the game, they had an opportunity to lose, and the champs had the heart. So yeah, maybe that is a culture thing. Maybe that heart's instilled with the new coach.
Yeah, I think without their star quarterback, Eric Schmid, being out, I think that makes me go more towards a cultural difference of like, we are not going to just lay down and be defeated just because literally our best player is not on the field. And if you hold Monmouth 4 straight times in the playoffs and you have to stop NDSU defensively on a final drive, and James Madison, you're down big at halftime, you've got to come all the way back to win that and then hold on to it. And then, of course, South Dakota State, you have to score a last-second touchdown or you don't win a national championship. How can that not be some extreme carryover into those players where they're like, you know what, guys, we're down 15. We've been here before. We've seen it. I just think that's a big culture shock. I would love to just say their quarterback was great and he made some plays, but they didn't have him. So that team just came together and rallied. And Casey Keeler and Sam Houston, they're the exception outside of the big three. We've said it before. This is the team you would want to emulate. This is a team you'd like to be like. So I think the culture had a huge impact on that for sure.
Yeah, I'll lean culture there. For yesterday for sure. Because what did they do? They went Herm Edwards. They played to win the game. Because they could have just scored 2 touchdowns and kicked extra points. But that first touchdown in the fourth quarter, they made SFA kind of sit back on their heels a little bit because they went for 2 and got it. So that set them up that they score again and kick an extra point. They go up 1. So Casey Keeler made a winner call. And I don't like crediting that guy for anything. I think we've known that before, but he's a great coach. And he instills that attitude in his players. And they finally put it all together and believe they can win. They all through, like Matt, you went all through last year's playoffs, and they just believe they're going to win no matter what. And they found a way, and they played to win the game, and I respect the heck out of that. Sorry, Rev, I thought you had it, but they made plays as usual.
Yeah, poor Rev. Dustin Helton, great fan. Unfortunately, SFA falls a little short for him. He was tailgating, drinking beers. Not to go too far away from Sam Houston, but Jamie, you're a Stats Top 25 voter. Rev did ask this question. We didn't have it officially in the template, but go ahead. Is SFA a top 25 team? I know they were kind of that questionable one, or did you not have them in this week?
I didn't have them in. I don't still have them in. There will be voters that give them votes, and you'll get no real argument from me. I mean, I don't, and the reason I don't have them in is I don't like their schedule. They didn't really play anybody and come lead into this game, but they showed that they're ready to go. They're on the doorstep. I think I think I've said it before. I think next year, look out for the Lumberjacks. I think they'll be really knocking on the door. But I think their schedule also sets up pretty well for them to potentially win out, get ranked, and maybe sneak in as that second team in the ASUN WAC Challenge, because Central Arkansas up and down, and everybody else stinks.
There you go. Everybody else stinks. There you go, Ref. You got a shot, right? Not too shabby. So well done by Sam Houston, and heck of another game. So, all right, guys. Well, we've knocked out Montana, Eastern, South Dakota State. Well, South Dakota State didn't have a heart attack, but Sam Houston's heart attack. Let's move on to everybody in the FCS's favorite team. They're so glad they haven't gone FBS yet. North Dakota State. So how about we move on to those folks? And Mr. Garth Rauschenberger has a question for us. Garth wants to know, how concerned should NDSU be about its passing offense and its play calling? And this is a very interesting question. I have heard these murmurs quite a bit amongst NDSU fans. It kind of started in the spring. And let me give you a little bit of a history lesson of where NDSU fans' thought process is, because some people might think, well, gee, settle down, like you played a rival, they're a top 10 team. But this is really where it's coming from. It's coming from when we promoted Tim Polasek to offensive coordinator after Carson Wentz was gone after 2015. Or Tim Polasek, once Carson Wentz left, he was the offensive coordinator. Tim Polasek was an offensive line coach. He had never called play calls before. And once Wentz and his amazing NFL talent was gone, it became very clear why Carson Wentz audibled a lot of plays, adjusted a lot of plays, and Easton Stick never got a rapport with Tim Polasek. Now, I don't know if Tim was promoted to an offensive line job in Iowa, but he left after 2016, and all the Bison fans blamed 2016 for play calling. JMU won that dang game, but there was a lot of situations, even in games where NDSU was winning big, where we said, oh, really? Like, are we developing a run game? Are any receivers going to get open? And then we brought in Courtney Messingham, and it just blew Stick in the offense out of the water. So NDSU fans seeing Tyler Roll be promoted from a running backs coach, never a play caller, to offensive coordinator, we were like, I don't know. And then Trey Lance happens. And now with Trey Lance gone, all those questionable calls where we're like, why are there never any receivers open in the middle? Like Cole Johnson, for example. When I watch James Madison play, why is there like always a receiver open on like a slant route 8 yards over the field? I never see that with NDSU and Tyler Roll's offense. I never see like a receiver who's just open and Quincy makes that easy throw. There's not a linebacker around him. Like, where is the play calling to set those things up, to open up opportunities? Why are we running fly sweeps 7 times a game? Why is Quincy Patterson doing quarterback draws over and over and over again? Now, you got out and you survived, but I'm not just throwing this complaint out, and this is a lot of stuff I'm hearing from Bison fans. I'm not just talking about this last week's game of NDSU UND. I'm talking about even in games where we win big, where Bison fan goes, oh, really? That was the 3 plays you tried for that 3 and out? Be like, oh my goodness, that was the most predictable play call. I can hear Phil Hansen on the call on the radio say, you're going to it too much. You're going to it too much. So I think NDSU fans are starting to get concerned, not with the talent. There's questions in terms of developing a good game plan for Quincy Patterson, because you got Phoenix Sproles, Christian Watson, huge tight ends, beast running backs, amazing offensive line, and Quincy Patterson who shows he can throw. I mean, that offense should be rolling. I'm not taking this last game at face value. I thought it would be closer. I thought UND would bring the heat. But I think there are some questions there for NDSU's offense. Guys, am I crazy now that I've given you kind of what the tailgate is saying around NDSU, or do you maybe feel the same things?
Yeah, I definitely see the same thing. I thought they were just kind of easing Quincy in, kind of getting him ready against lesser opponents. But, gosh, it sure seems like the offensive staff doesn't trust his arm. I mean, he only threw 10 times. He completed 4 of them. And when you've got the offensive line that you've got and the running back stables that you've got, Quincy's ability to run, I get that you lean on the run. But when you play a team with a little bit better defense, that's not going to work. And I feel like Sproles and Watson are being wasted.
Yes.
That's NFL level talent on the outside. Give them a chance. So I think they should be concerned. I don't know that it's going to hurt them, at least not now. But when you play South Dakota State or teams with really solid run defenses, you got to find a way to throw the ball. And if you can't do that, you just look like an option team. And I'm not trying to crap on NDSU because, I mean, they're undefeated, so it's working. But I definitely see what you're saying, and I think there needs to be a little bit more diversity in the play calling from the outside.
Yeah, I think NDSU fans feel like exactly what you said, wasted talent in terms of, yeah, we can win these games because our talent is so good and we're strong and big and physical and we got these advantages. but there's no setup of a play. There's no rhyme or reason of like, ooh, we did this and now we caught him off guard. Like with Courtney Messingham, when he brought in with stick and these things he would do, it was like, oh my goodness, we're just out coaching the living heck out of these other teams, and all the talent is just thriving in it. It seems like we're just being held back. I don't know. Kyler, are NDSU fans crazy, or is the eye test lying? Should we be trusting Tyler Roll and that offensive staff more?
Can I ask you a quick question first?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
When did Vegan leave the program to go to Wyoming?
Brent Vegan left with Craig Bowl. Yep. So that would be 17? After the 2013 season. So
he's been gone that long?
Yep. Tim Polasek, he stuck around with Chris Kleiman, and he was the offense coordinator 2014, 2015, 2016. So the 2 years with Wentz, of course, didn't feel like any issues. Boy, when Easton came up, though, in 2016, we were like, we called it the Post-it note offense. We're like, there's 10 plays you could write on here, and that's all we do. So, yeah, that's – sorry.
Okay. No, I was just kind of wondering because, all of a sudden now Montana State has a quarterback. Maybe since he's been gone, the quarterback play has regressed, but obviously that's not the case if he left that far back. Yep. For some reason, I was thinking he left a lot later, kind of when Matt Entz got promoted. That's when I was thinking he left, but never mind. So I think you guys should be a little bit worried because, a South Dakota State, they're going to run right through this offense, at least the eye paper test. If you're going to get and play a Sam Houston State, a Montana, Montana can shut down this offense from, North Dakota State right now. The good news is you could probably shut down their offense as well. But yeah, the top tier defensive teams, from everything I've seen at North Dakota State right now, I does not look like you have the offense. I don't know if it's the play calling per se, because again, I don't watch as many NDSU games as you guys. Obviously there's a talent, but it just seems the last 2 years when the offense is not rolling, there's one big difference maker. It's the two quarterbacks that have been in the system right now. Maybe you guys need to, maybe it's not even the system's broken. Maybe it's you need to change the system and adapt to your quarterback play, because maybe the other ones, like I said, all NFL talent, maybe these are the first 2 years you don't have an NFL talented quarterback. And I don't want to, judge on Quincy Patterson. He totally could be. No clue. We had a lot of hopes for him coming into NDSU going, nope, this is all that they need to do to change that spring offense. But now maybe it's looking, guess what? NDSU, for the first time in a long time, has two FCS quarterbacks. And that offensive play style, it's not working, especially if you're not able to have a quick release, if you're not able to make the right decisions and reads. Yeah, I mean, it could even be an NFL smarts thing on what's going on with quarterback. Because 4 for 10, even, why would you give him more opportunities to throw? I mean
a lot of credit, a ton of credit to UND as well. UND's defense played good. I think the big thing that's concerning NDSU fans, and I'm on repeat mode a little bit here, but is when we saw Stick under a coordinator who did not know how to get the best out of Stick, who's not an NFL talent, it was so clear and gross to watch. And then Stick got an offensive coordinator who was willing to completely revamp, adjust, open things up, get players and opportunities to get him to be successful. Everything took off. And I can see the talent in Quincy Patterson. His throws aren't missing. He has two or three bad throws a game, but who doesn't? It's just like, I literally don't see open wide receivers like virtually ever when the passing game goes. Like on Madden, when you just run a slant, I haven't seen an NDSU player catch a slant pass, I think, in 3 years. I'm like, that has to be coaching, right? We have to set up these plays for these wide open guys. I don't know how I can see it so easily out of a JMU, so easily out of a Montana, and then suddenly with NDSU, it just doesn't happen against inferior opponents included. So I guess we'll see how it plays out, but right now it would not shock me to see NDSU lose in the quarters or semis and to hear Fargo complain mostly about the play calling offensively. So I guess we'll see how it plays out. Speaking about being worried, Jamie Williams, you're not worried at all about your Dukes because Mr. Amos Fawcett says, should we be worried about James Madison after that margin of victory against New Hampshire on Saturday? What do you think there, Jamie? Your Dukes, which I'm rocking this beautiful hat from D-Law, we worried about those guys right now? Are we concerned about James Madison?
Nope, not concerned. In the words of Aaron Rodgers a few years ago, RELAX. We did everything we could to try to lose that game. I mean, penalties, bad penalties, which we saw against Weber State, so we know we need to clean it up. 3 turnovers, all 3 of them turned into touchdowns, actually, and 2 of them went right back for touchdowns, a 92-yard punt return, or fumble return, a pick 6, and then we had a fumble that set up a 45-yard drive. Now, why am I not concerned? Because we gave up 162 total yards on defense. The offense sputtered, but they still had over 400 yards. We played as bad as we could. Durham, New Hampshire, historically for JMU, has been an absolute house of horrors. I believe we are now 6-5 all time up there. It's a long trip. It's a quiet stadium. There's nobody there. You got to build your own energy. We just didn't play great. I mean, Cole still 75%, 3 touchdowns. Still ran the ball fairly effectively. So, no, I'm not worried. Could we lose a game to somebody? Sure. We've got tough players. It's a CAA. It's conference games. You know these opponents. You know their game plans. Don't expect – I think NDSU, JMU, we've been so spoiled by watching our team blow everybody out, not just this year, but, over for us the past half decade, for you guys the last decade. And you play a close game and it's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong.
Sky is falling.
Yeah, nothing's wrong. It's football. Games are going to be close. You need this kind of adversity throughout the season to test yourself, test your mettle. Sam Houston tested their mettle all season last year. Let's test your mettle. We came out on top as a cheap lesson to learn. Am I concerned? No.
And I'll use your stat, Jamie, as a cop-out for not only James Madison, but others. Not really a cop-out, but you just said 6-5 record at New Hampshire. For you guys, that's just not an easy place to play. People look at NDSU, overrated. Okay, they went to UND for the first time since 2003 against a hostile, crazy crowd. UND's on revenge mode from the spring. A top 10 team, mind you, as well. And then Montana. Let's defend Montana in terms of like, Montana lost. Yeah, going to Cheney, where they've never won on the red, against a hostile, sellout crowd in a top 10 matchup. So, like, these margin of victories, New Hampshire, they were fringe top 25. Did stats have them top 25 last week, or were they right on the outside, Jamie?
They were 25.
They were 25. Okay.
Yeah.
Or 21. 21. I just pulled it up, actually.
Was it 21? Okay.
Yep. For stats, they were number 21. So, once again, a top 25 team. And what do championship caliber teams do? Kind of like Kyler said with Sam Houston. They win. They find a way to win. They find a way to pull it off late. So, I really liked what you said, Jamie, about this is about as ugly as James Madison could play. We had so many turnovers, and we still found a way to pull it off. So, Kyler, what did you think about James Madison specifically? You had mentioned how you thought they were the best offense in the FCS in terms of like balance and execution. Still putting up all those yards. Cole Johnson, still 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. You still feel confident in the Dukes, my man?
Yeah, definitely still feel confident in the Dukes. I don't think the margin of victory should be of any concern because, like Jamie said, I mean, they were doing their best to lose this game, and they were still able to win. The good teams, they're able to still win those games, but I don't think UNH is that good of a program, right? Maybe a top 20 to top 30. So I will play a little bit of devil's advocate just because from someone who's been in this type of experience where maybe your teams are a little sloppier than they should be, this type of stuff can bite you in the butt when you're starting to play the better teams. I don't think you need to be worried about looking at the margin of score because guess what? You could even play really good games and it's amazing games and still have this margin of score versus not great opponents. But one thing that is concerning is discipline. Jamie mentioned that even with Weber, there were some mistakes. We even saw that maybe last year in the playoffs. Maybe that's why they didn't beat Sam Houston. They seem to have these types of mistakes. So maybe that's where you actually need to be a little bit more concerned of just because you can't make those mistakes versus the elite of the elite. And right now, James Madison is the elite of the elite as well. They have the talent, they have the coaching, they have the experience. I mean, I would not want to be paired against JMU. But if they're making these mistakes, you can't make these mistakes and expect to be a South Dakota State, a Sam Houston again. So that's only where they should be worried, but not by looking at the score, kind of look at how the game went.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
hate to give you PTSD, Jamie, but that arguably is the difference of, and credit to the Bison, but that arguably is the difference in 2017, 2019. I mean, we're not going to we're not going to
100%.
game plan to spy on Trey Lance. And 2017, I know that's the big one for Dukes fans, where they made a lot of mistakes, which could have cost them that title. So, and I love how Kyler, you give a perfect example. Not North Dakota State this year, South Dakota State. You're not going to be able to have those situations in Frisco. It's going to be razor thin. So,
Well,
Jamie, oh, go ahead, Kyler.
I was going to say, can we also just say how dumb it is that this is what, James Madison fans need to be worried about, potentially losing in the title game? Like when we're talking all of this smack about it, and then you actually think about what you just said, because James Madison is so elite, they're going to beat all of these teams until potentially they play another elite team and make these mistakes. But like you said earlier, maybe there's only 6 elite teams in the country, Matt. We're going to have to find out. So right now, James Madison's still looking at least, if they make these mistakes, like a semifinal team. If they don't make the mistakes, then they have nothing to worry about going into the title game.
Yeah, it won't shock me. I mean, even 2013 NDSU, who people say is the second best FCS team of all time behind Marshall, 96. They beat UNI in the fourth quarter on like a comeback win. So like everybody's got one situation throughout a championship run, maybe even 2, as you try to make your way to the end. So Jamie, got some more questions about your Dukes here when we get into our quick hitters, but I love the ugly win and just win is a win talk, because it rolls us into our second to last big question here, which is whose ugly win was most telling of the top 5 teams, and was this week a win is a win type for those teams that had those styles? Dustin Perman and Mr. Peter Mooney have questions revolving around this. So, gentlemen, I will throw it to each of you individually. Whose was most telling of the top 5 teams for a win is a win style? Kyler, go ahead, my man. What's most telling?
Most telling in a positive way for a win is a win?
You go either way, man. Positive or negative with this.
I guess they all won, right? One did not. One did not. Let me just reiterate. One of the top 5 teams did not.
Which one?
I don't know. Some team from, the mountains. But yeah, I'm actually going to...
unsubscribed.
I'll pick 2 different teams for 2 different reasons. One, Eastern Washington, I think, was a most telling that, guess what? Maybe the fluke versus Western Illinois is more of a fluke than what's really happened the rest of the games all season. And they were able to show people they can still score this year against maybe a very elite defense. The line wasn't holding up, but their defense is good enough to make stops to still, if we need to get in a slugfest, we can get in a slugfest with teams and not actually break. The other one that I'm going to say that's more telling in a negative way, NDSU. And the reason is, guess what? They still were able to get in a slugfest. There's still going to be a lot of title hopeful favorites, top 4 teams. But like what we just said, offense, you need to be very balanced to win a national championship right now. When you're looking at maybe some of the top 5 teams, even Eastern Washington, besides that 2 quarters, looked pretty balanced the rest of the season for at least what they need to be. James Madison looks pretty balanced. Sam Houston looks pretty balanced, even with a backup quarterback beating their biggest rivals. Right now, NDSU, without that offense clicking versus the elite, it doesn't really stand them a hopeful chance. They're going to only have to be able to play defense, and defense typically wins you championships or gets you far, but not against the other balanced teams that have great defenses as well.
I like that. I'm going to say that my most telling is going to be Sam Houston, because SFA, if most people believe they were a fringe top 25 team last week, New Hampshire was 21. I don't know if that's a comparable comp, but, a fringe top 25 team, basically. Take Eastern Washington and put them in Houston Texans Stadium, I think is where they played, against SFA, and get rid of Eric Barrier III, get rid of Quincy Patterson, get rid of Cole Johnson, something like that. How would they do against Sam Houston if Sam Houston had their starting quarterback? Just losing a starting quarterback and playing anybody is difficult. And I don't think any of us, maybe Eastern, they revolve quarterbacks. But
Gage Gruber?
Yeah,
Eric
Gage
Barrier,
Gruber.
2018?
I'm just saying, if NDSU loses their QB, I've seen it in the spring. If James Madison at this point, as they're building up these young men, lose Cole Johnson, ooh, boy. That's going to be brutal. So Sam Houston to win without that, to me, is very telling that this is a team. This is not just a QB who's made some plays and did some things in the playoffs and the passing game was attacked. Took a little luck, took a little strength, took a fourth quarter comeback, but it was very telling to me that Sam Houston's not going anywhere. So, Mr. Williams, who's most telling for you?
Well, I think you guys, and we all have we've touched on all the top 5 teams quite a bit. So I'm going to go just a shade off the board of the top 5 and say Southern Illinois. They can't put together a complete game for whatever reason. Last week, it was the really slow start against Illinois State. They were down 17-0, stormed back with 35 straight points. This week, they're up, and like Western really does, they must have that Marine spirit where they're not going to quit and they're going to fight to the end. They keep coming back and take that to overtime. They hit that 2-point conversion, and I love the call. Love the call. Playing to win. I love playing to win. Unfortunately, It didn't work. Then we're talking about Southern Illinois just losing to one of the worst teams in the Valley.
Right.
So I think it's telling that they can't put together or haven't put together a complete game. I think Jeremiah Rash, a great fan of ours of theirs on the page, has had his concerns. I think he's been impressed with Baker for the most part, but he's also a really realistic fan. Has kind of talked about this a little bit over the last few weeks too, that they got to put together that complete game, and that's what they need. And again, their schedule doesn't get any easier either.
Hey, good call. And Dustin Perman, to his credit, he had put his I kind of compressed this question to top 5 teams, but he had put James Madison, Sam Houston, and SIU. So he actually was curious about them. So good call, my man. I think it was telling quite a bit, but we're about to see if with these schedules what it really means as things get a lot tougher for these teams. And speaking of these teams, guys, and what they might be able to do and how it's going to play down the line, here we go. Final one of the Big 7, and it's a great one, guys. All right, so hypothetical here. Brandon Anderson and Keo Wilson had a similar question to this. Hypothetical here. Eastern Washington, James Madison, Sam Houston, and the winner of the marker, I'm going to say South Dakota State, just as because they have an FBS win, so we'll throw them as the winner. They're all undefeated. What is the top 4 seeding? Ho, ho, ho. Good luck to the committee on this one. Gentlemen, what do you think? How do you think that plays out between those teams? I've got a really mumbled, disgusting-looking schedule up on the screen for YouTube. Jamie, since I'm blocking your face off YouTube right now, you can kick it off. How would you seed those teams if those 4 are undefeated?
Well, let's do the easy one first. If those 4 teams are undefeated, and I know they're the defending national champions, it means something. But on their 2021 resume, Sam Houston's the 4. 10 games, they're probably not going to have a ranked win by the time the season ends. They're the 4. If Eastern Washington goes unbeaten in the Big Sky with an 11-game schedule and an FBS win, they're your 1. So then it comes down to...
Really?
Yeah. I mean, 11 games. There's a key. Remember, I just said 11 games.
That's true.
11 countable games towards your resume. So then it comes down to Jmu and South Dakota State. So JMU's going to have 4 wins that are potentially ranked at the time, 5 maybe ranked at the time wins. We'll see where teams wind up. South Dakota State's going to be in a similar boat with an FBS win, but only 10 games that count. So the FBS win probably sends JMU to Brookings in the semifinals. Just because of the FBS win, I think that's probably your tiebreaker there. But Sam Houston with 10 games, South Dakota State, having played Lindenwood, may hurt them. They might wind up on that 3 line. Now, if NDSU is that marker team that wins, I kind of feel like they are the 2 on history and resume. So I would say Eastern, marker, JMU, Sam Houston.
Ooh, what a breakdown. Okay, if James Madison goes to SDSU, that's the 3rd week of December, I will 100% drive down to that game. That's not that far. It's like 5 hours or so. No, it's not 5 hours. Brookings is way quicker than that. It's like 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So I'm 100% driving to that game, and I'm going to bring blue, yellow, and purple streamers. I'm just going to throw them both. So, Kyler, do you agree with Jamie on his assessment here?
I think the order is a little bit different, but I like his assessment. I think South Dakota State, if they go undefeated, gets the number 1 spot. I think on an 11-game schedule, they have the exact same amount of wins as Eastern Washington. The Missouri Valley is perceived to be the toughest of the divisions, and then they'll beat NDSU, that already carries a lot of weight. Southern Illinois, another top 10 team potentially, maybe not. I mean, depends on how they'll end the season. UNI looks really good again. UND, top 25 team. That's a pretty tough road. And then when you look at Eastern Washington, I think Mountain West team, South Dakota's is better. Okay. Now D2 team to D2 team, Central Washington's better than Lindenwood. So we're kind of at a wash right now. Eastern Washington, I think, has the tougher potentially scheduled than SDSU. But I think perception, and I even think what maybe SDSU deserves because of how they've been playing right now, and I think they're going to fly through a lot of these games, pretty hard to not give it to South Dakota State. But then I would have Eastern Washington number 2. I think strength of schedule alone, if we get through Montana State, Weber State, UC Davis, and it looks like UC Davis is going to be undefeated potentially when we play them because they've already played their tough game. Montana's already played their tough game. Montana and UC Davis may be 1-loss teams to Eastern Washington in that, so that's going to boost up the resume because those are going to be seeded teams as well if it turns out. But yeah, I think the easy 2 are locks. South Dakota State 1, Eastern Washington 2. They would both get home field advantage, and that's all I care about. I don't care about being 1 or 2. But then I think James Madison would get the 3rd seed. Even though Sam Houston State had a great spring season, they're defending champs. We've seen with the committee that does not matter. They do look at resume, and they look at resume pretty well. And like Jamie said, they may not have a ranked win. Central Arkansas was ranked when they played them, right? They may not be ranked at the end of the year. Now, that doesn't matter to the committee. The committee cares about what they're ranked at the time you play, which is kind of unfortunate. So they'll at least get 1 ranked win. But the CAA looks a little bit tougher than the AQ7 right now. You're looking at potentially a 4-bid conference versus maybe 1 to 2 bid conference from the AQ7. I think you have to give JMU the 3rd seed and then Sam Houston the 4th in this scenario.
Great breakdown. If those 4 teams are there, I'm going to put NDSU number 1. No, I'm just kidding. I can't say much more than what you guys said. I think that's great. A great breakdown. Those schedules are going to be super interesting. But I do not want to be on the committee because fans, they're going to be mad. They're going to be angry, except for whoever gets the top 2. Then they're going to say, well, the committee's usually pretty good. It's pretty understandable what they did here. So
ETSU.
yeah, ETSU, dude. There's so many good teams this year. It's crazy. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. All right, gentlemen, the Big 7. I'm glad it kind of stayed on a little bit of a theme. That was a good time. But let's kick in and make it a little bit random here with our quick hit questions of the week.
Just because your question is answered quickly doesn't mean we don't care. These are the quick hit questions of the week.
All right, guys, we got 7 great quick hit questions here. We're going to kick it off right off the bat with Jacksonville State, who got crushed by Kennesaw. Scott Moody wants to know, was Jacksonville State's 31-6 loss at KSU the knockout blow to the John Grass era? And Peter Mooney wants to say, are we done talking Jacksonville State? I'll take that bottom one. We're never done talking Jacksonville State. They will always find a way to be relevant in the conversation, whether they're terrible, good, top 25, preseason, some transfer, never done. But Jamie, is this the end of the coach here as his contract's coming up?
It's got to be. That team quit. They're done. Look at it. They quit. It's terrible. He's got to go.
Mentally, they're completely shot. I guess we'll see what happens if JSU holds on for a little bit more hope. We'll see how it plays out. Mr. Neal, this is a good one here from Mr. Jacob Martinez. He says, some great games this weekend. Do you think the line was blurred between the Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams in the top 25? Or do you think the top 5 are still the heavy favorites? What do you think?
I think it's blurred a little bit. I think we have a lot of good teams this year. I think this may be the most talented season that we've had in a long time in terms of who could potentially beat other teams. I don't think there's a true top 5. I'm going to lean towards anyone who gets a seed is going to be capable of probably going all the way, depending on the game and matchup.
Yeah, we have seen how home field advantage has been huge, regardless of your past success and how it all plays out, which is good. Mr. Williams, I said I'd get back to your Dukes here a little bit, but with JMU's schedule in October, do you think the Dukes might be in trouble after their New Hampshire escape? Anthony B. Man wants to know. You worried? I know you said you're not, but a little bit of trouble down the line?
No, I'm not worried. Could we drop a game? Sure. Our next 3 games are Villanova at home, and they played us tough the last time they played in Harrisonburg. Took till the fourth quarter for us to really get that game under control. Then we go to one of our bigger rivals, Richmond. We won big the last time we were there, but it's still a big rivalry game. That's all I'm going to say about Richmond. And then we go to another place that's been really tough for us to play, Delaware. Delaware's got their quarterback issues. Henderson, is he hurt? Is he not? He played a little bit. But still, Newark, Delaware is a tough place to play in the CAA. So am I concerned that we're in trouble? No. Could we drop a game? Yeah.
Cool. We'll have to see how it plays out for the Dukes down the line. Mr. Jason Plotkin says, Holy Cross, what's the deal? I feel like we are asking this question every single week. Holy Cross, holy moly, gets a win over one of the worst FBS teams ever, over Connecticut, loses to Merrimack, and then beats Yale by 3, kills Monmouth, so everyone's like, woohoo, Monmouth was supposed to be good, and then gets murdered by Harvard. So Holy Cross just seems to be all over the place when it comes to the Ivy League. I think we can just stop talking about Holy Cross. I'm sorry I said Ivy League, but Holy Cross, if you're going to be that up and you're going to be that down, that's just not a team that's consistent, and it's not a team likely that's going to end up in an auto bid situation. So I think Holy Cross will drop a few more and probably be out of this playoff talk. So Mr. Neal, what happens to Sam Houston's ranking after they were playing without their star quarterback and narrowly winning that game? Are you going to drop them, move them around at all?
I didn't drop them at all. I've seen some polls that have maybe dropped them, but I don't think it's them dropping because of Schmid not playing and playing a close game. I think it's maybe because of how other teams played. I've seen some polls where Eastern Washington got a little bit of a bump and maybe replaced Montana, which some people had above Sam Houston in their personal polls. But I mean, I didn't. I left Sam Houston exactly where they are. And I think when the polls come out, they're still going to be the number 1 team, right? Are they number 1 or is South Dakota State number 1? I forgot which one.
They're number 1.
Yep,
yeah, so I don't think anyone's going to drop them for losing or winning close to a rival without your number 1 player. Like, if anyone's dropping them because of that, then maybe they should think again. That's really tough to do. If someone's raising another team because of performance, it's a little bit of a different argument.
Great question, Keith Hooper. Kyler, great answer. All right, Joshua Hoffman, South Dakota State fan. Has the FCS as a whole caught up to NDSU? I would say no as a whole, because if you wanted to take teams 8 through 127, no, they have not. I will say that the pool of teams capable of knocking NDSU off certainly has expanded. It used to be like, there's this one team, and dang, if they lose or get upset, NDSU is going to win. Like 2017. Weber State's about to beat James Madison. Everyone's like, crap, NDSU is going to win the title because Weber's going to get killed by them. But that doesn't exist anymore. We don't even know if NDSU might get past the quarterfinals, because there are 5 to 6 teams that I don't know if they've caught up with them long term, but definitely for this season, maybe next, they'll be competitive with NDSU, and there's no guarantee that the Bison should book their tickets to Frisco. I do it because I want to see you guys. So hopefully that answers your question there, Josh. Your bunnies are looking good, by the way, my man. All right, final one here for you, Kyler. Nathan Leon says, since Weber is running the whole gauntlet of our QB depth chart this season, he's got to ask this. How much of Eastern Washington's success hangs on EB3? Would they have as much success if he was injured or if he got out? He also puts in quotations, he is not wishing ill upon him. He thinks he's a great player, and he's just genuinely curious on how much impact he has on the team. So it's not coming from a bad spot. What do you think, man?
I think he's the most impactful player in the FCS right now. So, of course, he has a giant impact on our team. I personally would think, if he goes down, I don't think we're beating the Montanas of the world. I don't think we're beating the Montana States of the world. We are probably still beating the 35 and lower teams in my head. But, I mean, also I have to look at a little bit of historic data and go, maybe we would still be a little bit okay. I know I'm not going to talk about Gunner. We have other quarterbacks. If Gunner was not working for a game, we have some other stud quarterbacks. And all I'm going to allude to is what happened when Gage Gruber went down with an injury in 2018. If you guys aren't familiar with Gage Gruber, if everyone saw him, he was the Eric Berrier of 2018, the front runner for the Walter Payton. He was crushing everyone in the first half of the season in terms of yards. He was doing a phenomenal job. And then, of course, he went down with an injury. That question came up. Is Eastern Washington going to fall apart? They dropped one game and made it all the way to the championship where they lost to NDSU. So historic data says maybe not. I would say Eric Berrier is definitely an asset, and I would not want to risk this to try and gamble. I think we would falter a little bit, but at the same time, recent history says we may be okay. So, but yeah, I would put my money on Eric Berrier's special talent. If it was on anyone's team and they lost him, you would take a hit.
Yeah, definitely take a hit. Kind of depends on your culture too. If NDSU loses an offensive lineman, they tend to be okay a little bit, but QB Eastern might be the only place on the planet where that actually works out. So awesome quick hit questions. Awesome questions as a whole from our FCS Fans Nation individuals, all our fans. We appreciate you guys. Let's kick into an outstanding game of the week.
This is the matchup you should be paying attention to. This is the FCS Fans Nation Game of the Week.
All right, gentlemen. Game of the week is a big one here, going all the way to Brookings, as we have number 7, currently ranked on Sunday, 3-1 Southern Illinois, traveling to number 2, undefeated 3-0 South Dakota State. Once again, Staps top 25 as of Sunday, October 3rd. So, guys, we got a big one here in the Missouri Valley. Could change a lot of things in terms of jumping up and down. Almost feels a little bit like an Eastern Montana sort of matchup, where it doesn't doom anybody, but it certainly could help you long term. So I'm going to start with you, Kyler, because you're a little bit of a mystery here, I think, more than the rest of us. What do you think? Prediction, winner, who takes this one?
First off, can we go back and make picks, start tallying all of these so we can give our records?
Yes, absolutely. That'll be easy.
I was going to say, I think I'm batting pretty high percentage right now in these game of the weeks. So if you want to bet on a game, take my picks. You're always going to win. And then when you lose, not my problem. Do not listen to me with any pick I do. It's going to lose. All right, so let's see here. Southern Illinois, South Dakota State. South Dakota State's passing every single eye test. I think I have them at number 1 for a reason. I'm not going to bet against the number 1 team I have in my polls. South Dakota State wins 28-17.
Ooh, 28-17. Close one. Should be fun. Blowout win for South Dakota State in the regular spring season at SIU. Dominance, followed up by a very close and thriller quarterfinal matchup in Brookings in the playoffs between these squads. Jamie, how does it play out, my man?
In between those two games with the same result, I think this isn't going to be a blowout. Southern Illinois, they can score. They've shown they can score. They've got weapons too. But like Kyler said, the eyes tell me South Dakota State's the best team. I've got them number 1 as well. Going to give each team 10 more points than Kyler did, 38-27. Maybe the late score making the 2 scores versus a 1-score game. But this is competitive all the way.
Competitive smash mouth football. This is going to be insane. Southern Illinois coming off a questionable game, even though Western Illinois' offense looks really good. Going to Kansas State, giving those Wildcats some troubles. So South Dakota State is going to go down this weekend. And Southern Illinois is getting the upset, 31-27. Salukis get the victory. Chaos erupts. My record also, I think, is perfect. Because I picked Eastern last week. Don't listen to Kyler. No, I picked Montana. I'm going to go with the upset. Give me Southern Illinois by 4. This podcast is no fun if we all agree.
You guys pick for the views. I pick for the stats.
I you know what? Sometimes it's not even just about the views. It wouldn't be that crazy of an upset, would it? It wouldn't be that insane.
We leave the ego to you, Kyler.
Yeah, thank you. It wouldn't be that crazy, but it's still pretty crazy.
It's still pretty crazy.
Crazy.
Kind of like me picking Central Arkansas for fun, right?
Yeah, yep. Exactly.
Hey, the one guy who picked the wrong team in Frisco I'm gonna stick to what I do, and that's picking the wrong team. And the one time it hits, I'll tweet about it on Twitter 7,000 times, so people just think I'm really smart. So there you go.
Yeah, wait. How come every Sam Houston fan gives you so much credit for last year, but you were the only one who picked against them? How stupid is the fan base?
He marketed himself well.
Oh yeah, it's all about marketing. But in all seriousness, I'm pretty sure on this. I was the first one to call Sam Houston like really early in preseason. Like they were number 18, and I was like, watch out. And I did the same thing for Montana this year. But when it comes to actual games, oh, it's terrible. I get one preseason team a year. That's it. So
solid.
Hey, don't let me down, Salukis. Let's do it. All right, gentlemen. Hey, this was a wonderful episode. We hope everybody really enjoyed the questions. We really enjoyed getting them. We enjoyed answering them. And these all came from the FCS Fans Nation Facebook page. Join our Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram for FCS Fans Nation, the #1 platform, the premier place to talk FCS football. Jamie Williams, thank you for dropping the game threads this last weekend. Kyler Neal running an outstanding pick'em challenge. We've got top 10s dropping. If you can believe it, we're only about 7-8 weeks away from a playoff bracket challenge as this season is winding forward and it is crushing it. All right, gentlemen, we will see next week if the top 5, top 6 teams look mediocre or scared again, or maybe if they're going to blast through. We'll have to see how it plays out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. We will catch you next week. Kaboom!
Thank you for listening to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your preferred listening platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google, or even YouTube. And make sure to follow our FCS Fans Nation social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for listening to the premier podcast for FCS football. Boom!
Hey, that's pretty American.
Yeah.
That's smart. America.